I think most importantly, thank you to all of the constituents from the 3rd District of New York to travel down here to make sure that their voices are heard. Congressman Torres and I filed a complaint with the House Ethics Committee a couple of weeks ago. It was one of the first things that we did as part of this Congress because we saw the unbelievable and unprecedented amounts of fraud, deception, and lies that a single person has brought to what should be the hallowed halls of the Capitol. And at the time, as many of you will recall, Speaker McCarthy said that the voters elected him, and that's why he was not going to call for his resignation. Well, today, we have the voters who are here.
Yes.
And we have information from lots more voters all around the district that clearly indicates that if they had known about the lies and deception, they would have never voted for George Santos.
Exactly. That's right.
So if you're going to steal money from the bank by holding the bank up, and you take the money, and then you say, well, the bank gave me the money, so it's okay, that's what Speaker McCarthy is saying.
Yep.
He's saying that you can deceive the voters, you can defraud the voters, but as long as the voters voted for you, then it doesn't matter. Well, now today, we're starting to see him backtracking, in part because of the incredible advocacy of the folks who are here. Because the voters have been heard, and the voters of the 3rd District want George Santos to resign. So now they're going to punt to the Ethics Committee. Now they're going to make the case, oh, well, we have to wait to see what the Ethics Committee is going to do. But let's remember, the ethics complaint and the ethics investigation is only going to focus on his financial disclosures and his campaign finance. Because the law, to this point, does not prohibit someone from lying about their education, from lying about their employment history, from lying about their military experience, from lying about their ethnicity, from lying up and down the level. That's not what they're going to investigate. But all of those lies by George Santos are more than enough to not only bring him disrepute, to bring this hallowed body disrepute, but to bring the Republican Party disrepute as well. And so the question then becomes, why won't Kevin McCarthy and Elise Stefanik urge George Santos to resign? We know George Santos is not going to resign on his own. He's making more money in Congress than he's ever legitimately made before.
That's right.
What's his incentive to resign? It's going to have to come from the top. But what do we know about Kevin McCarthy and Elise Stefanik? That they also knew about George Santos's lies during the campaign. Are they not pushing him to resign because they are concerned that George Santos has information that may be damaging to them about their role in the fraud scheme? We have to ask these questions because we've never seen a fraudster continue to get support by a Republican Party in this Congress.
Yes.
And make no mistake about it, George Santos, for as long as he is in Congress, is a member of the Republican Party. And if the Republican Party wants to wrap their arms around George Santos, then they can continue to go ahead. This should not be partisan. And in New York 3, it's not partisan because the overwhelming majority of Republicans also think that George Santos should resign. Republican members of Congress in New York have called on George Santos to resign. And it is now time, once and for all, listening to the voters and constituents of New York 3 who are down here to make their voices heard, it is time for George Santos to resign.
Yes.
Thank you.
That was fabulous. Thank you so much.
Thank
So
you.
much. So now I have the pleasure of turning this over to Representative Torres, who actually came to our district just a few weeks ago. We were so pleased to have you come, and so we can thank you in person, and so happy to have you here, to be here with you today. And thank you for your leadership and your ongoing work with us. So thank you.
honor to come to your district. And normally if I go into the district of a congressperson, I'm going to give them the heads up. But since you have an absentee congressperson, I couldn't do so. Of the 535 members in Congress, there's no one who poses a greater threat to the integrity of the institution than George Santos.
That's right.
And the fact that George Santos resigned from his committees is an admission of guilt.
Yes.
And if George Santos is too corrupt and too compromised to be seated on a committee, then it logically follows that he's too corrupt and too compromised to be seated in the United States Congress.
That's right.
And it is obvious that Kevin McCarthy forced him out of his committee. And it's time for McCarthy to force him out of the United States Congress.
Yes.
So George Santos says, force him out.
Force him out.
Force him out.
Force him out.
Now George Santos, I give him credit. He's the greatest fiction writer in the history of Congress. I have trouble keeping track with his lies, but he has so far pretended to be a brain cancer survivor and a Broadway producer of Spider-Man and a volleyball champion and a survivor of an assassination attempt on Fifth Avenue.
He probably has ChatGPT.
The lies of George Santos are every bit as outrageous and outlandish as the man himself.
Yes.
But even more troubling than his lies is his pathological lawbreaking. George Santos violated House ethics because he claimed to have received millions of dollars from various clients, but he never disclosed the names of those clients on his disclosure as required by federal law. George Santos violated campaign finance law because he illegally received more than $700,000 in a loan, either from a third party or an illegal pastor.
Or in rubles.
And he earned rubles, maybe cryptocurrency. He also violated securities law because he operated as a broker for a $17 million Ponzi scheme without registering with the FEC. Every day is a new day with George Santos. Every day we find out about a new lie that he has told or a new law that he has broken. Every day he brings new embarrassment to the people of New York, to the people of Long Island. And it is time for him to resign.
Yes.
His ability to govern has been crippled by a complete collapse of credibility. According to polling, the majority of Republicans in his district want him to resign.
That's right.
Resign.
The majority of House Republicans in New York have called upon him to resign.
Resign.
His constituents want nothing to do with George Santos. His colleagues want nothing to do with George Santos. Even the close associate of a sanctioned Russian oligarch wants nothing to do with George Santos. When you're more radioactive than the Russian oligarchs, there's something wrong with you. Right? His only reason for remaining in public office is to maintain leverage for a plea bargain in the event of criminal prosecution. His only purpose is to be a punchline for comedians. But the time has come to end the tragedy and the comedy that is George Santos. You should no longer be deprived of the representation that you deserve. And so I will not stop until George Santos is held accountable. And we must call out the hypocrisy of Speaker Kevin McCarthy. The House Republicans came here promising to drain the swamp, but they refused to drain the greatest swamp of them all, the Santos swamp. And it's time to drain it. Thank you so much.